about AI in coaching. Dan, great to see you again, buddy. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. This is going to be an interesting one. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, always. I mean, I feel like we had a little chat, didn't we, just before we come on? I feel like there's lots of scaremongering with AI, but actually also there's lots of positives to come out of this. And I feel like actually in coaching, there is lots of positives to come. But what do you see about this, Dan? Are you worried about how this might impact X and LinkedIn and Instagram? How do you see? What's your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to have an impact, whether you like it or not. So I think on X, LinkedIn, probably not too much at the moment. You're talking like at least 1 or 2 years before it can kind of replicate people.
Yeah,
Before you should be scared. I think in that time you can make a lot of money and make a lot of impact, a lot of following, as a human, while it's still competitive, while still people are still like it's a skill, and not everyone can do it.
yeah,
So definitely make the most of the time you've got now is my advice. And yeah, I think there's definitely a lot.
absolutely. One of the things we talked about, and I said, I feel what AI might do is it might improve coaching, might make it more accessible at entry level. So do you remember I said that coaching actually is really expensive, and if you think about it as well, we're going through a crisis. So does an opportunity to speak to a Tony Robbins AI, a James Smith AI about low level stuff, is that a great opportunity? Low level stuff. I've got a good example of that as well. Of some of the messages that we got on X and some of the stuff that I've done as well. But Dan, do you see that? Do you see like it might create more of an opportunity for everyone to tap into some level of coaching, therapy, assistance, advice? It might create a greater opportunity for mindfulness in this space, for personal development. What do you see for that?
Yeah, so at the moment we're kind of like in the golden era where it's Google but better, basically, where people aren't losing their jobs at the moment, but people are getting better advice, better information. So for coaches, I think unless you're especially shit, I wouldn't worry
Yeah,
because Google's always been there solving the surface level problems. But you need to remember that your job as a coach is kind of to look at the person as a whole, keep them accountable, really lean into that human side. And I think that's what I'm doing now with personal branding, what we're both doing. People are always talking about like just give value as like advice, but it's kind of not enough anymore because there's high barriers to entry. Like everyone could get advice from ChatGPT these days. It's all about the personality, all about the packaging, the humor, and definitely people need to lean more into that. We talk about that a lot on the podcast as well.
yeah.
But yeah, it also can't teach you stuff very well. So obviously, as a coach, you're still very in demand, especially if you're good at what you do.
Absolutely. My assumption is this: let's say that there's a real clear difference between therapy and coaching. Therapy is very black and white, very clinical. Coaching is more subjective. You go into being, someone who helps them every step of the way. Does AI lean more into being more black and white, an opportunity to take over therapy, doctors, low level sort of stuff around that? The example I was giving you, Dan, before we come on, I know this isn't related to coaching, but it's similar. As my wife's been unwell, the first place she looked to self-diagnose herself was Chat GPT, and I'm thinking that wasn't a thing 3 or 4 years ago. You were calling 111, you were whatever you were doing, but that's just a good example of, I think, what it might be is an access point, an easier place, a more simple place to look for information like this. It's difficult to build a relationship. It's black and white, clinical. Would you agree with that? That maybe it leans more into therapy, more into, let's say that you're, giving advice on crypto. Let's say that you're, would Chat GCP be better for something like that instead of actually coaching and helping someone every step of the way?
Yeah, I think advice on crypto is an interesting one because obviously it's really good at the maths, it's really good at crunching the numbers, the analytics, the predictive analytics. It can also be used for kind of testing what's interesting on X, what's trending. You can see what kind of posts you need to make to get more views from these specific people. So it's very interesting. It's gonna help us a lot at the moment. But I'm not sure it's going to help all those guys who are speculating about meme coins and all this stuff. But yeah, it's interesting.
Absolutely. That's the first sort of coaching I think will struggle, is something like that. I feel the stuff where actually like empathy is needed, where, thought, feeling, maybe not thought, but feeling for sure. I just can't see how AI will replicate that. It will try, but I think it'll be pretty simple, pretty straightforward to work it out. AI will get better, and we're going to lean into the Terminator in, 10, 20 years time or whatever that was. But I feel like we're a long way from that. So I feel like actually that first part of AI being, competitive or taking over some areas of the coaching space, I feel like crypto and that sort of stuff is probably one of the first, maybe not first to go. I feel like that's something that people will lean into and look into. But I also think as well that, like I said, there is a lot of scaremongering with AI. Lots of people are worried about it, but I actually feel like there are so many uses for it within coaching, so many ways that I've integrated it, that we've helped other people use apps and other things to do. Any favorites that you've got? Any that you recommend?
I'm not like an AI expert, but I think the ones that I'm using most are obviously ChatGPT. It's great for the ideas, the stems, for even like the notes for this call. I use ChatGPT to give me some like topics to talk about. What's it called? Ocus AI is turning our podcasts into Instagram reels. So obviously they could be better. If you've got a professional editor, they're going to do it better. But it's better than nothing, isn't it? So you're getting the more eyeballs in like 10 minutes. So, and also Otter AI is a good one. I'm seeing a lot of people use that, summing up the meeting notes. So yeah, it's interesting. I think ChatGPT at the moment, it's kind of limited. It can't be used to create content really. It can be used to create audio, but that's not really going to make you any sales. I think it goes back to the just provide value thing, which is just, it's not enough. There needs to be like stories or humor or client case studies, like we did on the podcast, helping those people in real life, adding context. So I think that's not going to change for a good few years yet.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a really good point. Otter AI is really, really interesting, and I found out about that through associate coaching with a bigger company, if that makes sense. If you look at when I was first getting into coaching 10 years ago, you literally set up on Zoom, you made your own notes on pen and paper, is old school and classic as that might seem, and you use that to impact on your coaching. But I realized through doing the associate coaching that when every single note was recorded, and you would have a summary and you'd have, what you talked about, that is absolutely priceless when it comes to not missing a thing. Because actually, I think one of the things as well is coaches aren't going to know everything. They can't solve every problem. But actually reading it back a second time, seeing those notes in front of you, that makes a massive difference. That makes it land, if that makes sense, where you don't miss. And it's priceless, that. A really good talking point though, Dan. This is it. This is one that we get a lot in the DMs, and I have a little bit experience about this, is using AI bots on landing pages, pretending to be you, or in your DMs, talking to potential clients. I've got a really good example of this, but do you agree with that? So for me, if I get a DM and it's like, I want to integrate a bot to talk on your landing page, for me, it's an instant no, because I quite like the human reaction that goes with it. I think that the talent, the skill in signing clients is from DM strategy, right? But I see the simplicity of it, like ManyChat, for example. But do you see it as useful? Do you see that it's going to grow? What's your thoughts on that?
I think if you've got 100,000 followers and you're getting an extra like 500 followers a day that you want to DM, it's great because you can get that volume in, and they already trust you obviously because you've got 100,000 followers. If you're like a normal human with 1 to 10,000 maybe followers, you can just DM them yourself, and you're going to get so much better results from being human. Like I think one real DM where you're looking at their profile, you're finding something unique about them, and just being like a human having a real conversation, it's going to be more effective than 100 like, hi, let's connect, those DMs that you just get loads of. It's just not standing out. You need something to stand out. The 100,000 followers will stand out, but it's easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's like it's not needed unless you've got real massive volume, is it? And I think that's a good point for anyone who's trying to, drop a cold DM in anyone's inboxes, is maybe to have a look how many followers they've got. If you drop in a potential message into someone who's got 200-300 followers, is it worth it? It's probably pointless. Actually, I think it will hinder them, if that makes sense. They probably lose clients because of that interaction. But I do have a really good example of this. So when I was doing the associate company coaching for the company, when you log on to the website, the first thing you get when you go on someone's profile is a bot. Now that bot, they don't know it's a bot. I think they believe it's you. And the really interesting thing is the bot talks like I talk. It's studied the transcripts. It knows the terminology I use. Obviously it doesn't speak in an accent, but it knows I'm from the UK, for example. It's so wildly intelligent. It blows my mind. And where it is really useful is obviously this bot is talking away when you're not online, when you're not there. And then you get a summary of where they're from, what's wrong with them, not wrong with them, how they want help, how they want to develop. And it's a great starting point. It does make it simple. But actually, when it comes to coaching, I quite like finding out those problems naturally. That probably goes back into that ManyChat sort of thing. What's your thoughts on that, Dan? Do you think that might be the way forward in terms of coaching? Is these little bots pretending to be almost like a helper? And what's your thoughts on that associate coaching bot? Do you think that's a good idea, or do you think that's a little dangerous?
I think it could be a good idea with a little bit of thought, a little bit of development. But if people know that they're talking to a bot, they're not going to be as attracted. They're going to be probably not as interested. And obviously, you're not only qualifying them in terms of age and problem and budget. You're also qualifying them in terms of how well you work with them. And you're not going to know that if a bot is talking to them and not you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a good tool. It's not quite there yet, but hopefully soon, yeah. And it's gonna save a lot of people a lot of time in the DMs, because I don't think a lot of people enjoy DMs. You've just got to do them, haven't you? But outsourcing that kind of aspect of client acquisition is definitely a good avenue to go down.
Absolutely. So look, Dan, we talked about the positives of how AI can help coaching, but I can't get rid of this Skynet feeling. I know, Dan, that's probably a bit out of your age range, but Skynet was the AI in the Terminator movies, and it created the Terminators. And originally they worked side by side with humans, and then obviously they were threatened and challenged, and that's a big thing. But for me personally, when I look at, say, the advice that my wife got over a sickness, it was very black and white, very clinical, almost like it was a shock factor and far too much information, And actually, I feel like part of human nature is to work out a few things on your own, like the same sort of idea where kids have got to play in sand pits to build immunity, sort of stuff. You learn as you go. Do you see any real dangers with it? Is it too much too soon? Are we not ready for it in our cycle of evolution, etc., etc.? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I was talking to a guy who develops AI a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of saying, what jobs do you think are going to be left at the end, at 20, 30 years from now? I said that I think the only one that could be left is a sales guy, sales closer, because obviously you've got that human connection. But he says quite rightly that if it's going to be less time, if you got to talk to a bot for 5 minutes instead of talk to a person for a half an hour meeting, they're going to talk to a bot. So I think on a long enough time horizon, in theory, everyone could be replaced. But that's not something to worry about for now. I think you've got to lean into what you are good at, which is obviously the human side. And yeah, take advantage of this time, because a lot of people don't even use AI. A lot of people don't even know what ChatGPT is. So I think definitely take advantage, be more productive, outsource what is easy, like the ideas, the stems of call notes, stuff like that. And yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Go back to this sort of idea of humans v Chat GPT. What's better? Have you heard the story of the Grandmaster chess player and the Atari. Have you heard this?
Yes.
It's a great story. I feel like that's a good way to see it. So I know that the classic story wasn't it, is that they created a bot in I think it was the 80s or the 90s, whatever it was, to play a Russian grandmaster, and it won. Obviously the computer beat the chess master, and they were all shocked. The same Atari, I believe, that they created then beat ChatGPT recently. So that makes me think that actually maybe some things, maybe some of the old ways are better. Maybe like some things, if it's not broken, why fix it? I think that with lots of things. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like maybe we don't need to go any further? Maybe some things are great. Maybe there's no need to take this up a level. I think that's a good way to look at landing pages. To look at Instagram, to look at your profiles, to look at your whatever. PFP's being a great one, Dan. Is it better to have something which is like very human or something which is like crazy AI? Any thoughts on that? And any thoughts on the chess story? Are some of the old ways better than the new ways?
Yeah, I think in theory, ChatGPT, the way it works, or the way it's supposed to work, is it kind of scrapes Google from like every web page ever, every AI even ever, and it's supposed to learn from all of that. Obviously, it hasn't done that with the Atari because the Ataris are beating it, so I'm not sure how that's worked. Clearly, it's not getting every single bit of information, so you've definitely got an edge there. In theory, if it did get every bit of information, it should beat everything. But yeah, I'm not sure. If you fed it like maybe 1,000 of your tweets, it would be interesting to see if it could actually replicate. But then at the same time, it wouldn't be able to come up with creative new ideas, which is obviously what you want to get for the new clients, and also the DMs. It still can't do that without sounding very robotic. So yeah, I think it's going to develop very fast in the future, but at the moment it's not quite there with the data collection.
One thing that I reckon is going to develop massively is Canva. I saw an advert. I'm not sure if you've seen this advert, where it's changed slightly, where you can talk to an AI and it will start to create stuff for you. A bit like what ChatGPT does when you type in a prompt and ask it to make a picture. It's growing, isn't it? It's getting better and better weekly. That is obviously going to be a massive difference moving forward, isn't it? It's maybe not so much the captions. I do feel like there's such a nature, like a great human nature to people writing that, and we can clearly see that, can't we? Who's cheating? Who's using Chat GPT? Maybe it's not cheating. Maybe we can see, can't we? Where it's not human, where it's not their own words, for example, not their authentic self. But I feel like actually some of these pictures, that's going to change a lot. But then it makes me think: are they that important when it comes to marketing your own coaching business? Actually, like, remember we laughed a lot, didn't we? Every new coach goes through the same cliche. They put pictures of mountains, they put quotes, they put, they talk about themselves a lot on their pictures, on their LinkedIn, Instagram. What's your thoughts on that? Do you see that being like a rapid development? I think that's going to be the biggest change in terms of how coaches advertise themselves is like this Canva change, these AI edited images.
Yeah, it should be. I hope it is. I actually changed my profile picture a couple of weeks ago. I went on this AI and I told it to. I took a photo of myself. I told it to change the background to the same color as my website. It didn't do that. It was absolutely. I don't know what it was thinking, to be honest. It didn't even change the background color. I'm not sure what was going on, but yeah, it should develop in theory in the future. I think if everyone looks the same, though, it begs the question: if you didn't use AI, you'd be at an advantage there. So I think maybe that's the same with the content as well. Maybe if it gets to a point where everyone's using AI, you'd be better off just posting random like shower thoughts or anything like that, just creative stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Well, human nature, we have this way of going full circle, right? So fashion's a great one, music's a great one as well, where like a trend might come in and we go all into it, and then we revert back to like a normal, retro sort of approach. I think something like that might happen. I feel like we might go full tilt, all full steam ahead into AI, images, captions, videos which aren't actually us. We've just put a prompt in. But I feel like people might get bored of it, and they might get bored of it quickly. They might miss that human interaction, want to go back. The funniest way I can think I can say this is fashion. How many people, when you go to raves or the pub or whatever it might be, they go back to retro styles. They don't want to dress modern. They want to go back to old, unique styles. Do you think something like that might happen? I think that's what will probably happen. Is for a few years we're going to go into it, and then people will miss those human characteristics, those human interactions, and come back round.
I think whatever makes the most money is going to stick. So whatever makes the most money is usually what people like the most, or what's most convenient for people. So I think if people who are using AI are getting suddenly loads of clients, loads of money, more people are going to use AI, but then everyone's going to be using it. So you're not really going to have that competitive advantage of using AI. But yeah, maybe people don't like the Canva AI photos, stuff like that, and they don't engage with them. And then those people, they revert back, or maybe if they don't revert back, if they think AI is that good, they just don't get any clients, and they end up dying off. Really, it's kind of like evolution. So whoever makes the most money is going to keep making the most money, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So again, this brings us back to worry and doubt and maybe a bit of uncertainty. How does this sound? So I'll throw a scenario at you. If you look at how coaches and OnlyFans, I know that's a real cliche, advertise their services, there's almost like a similar way. Yeah, the aesthetics behind it, the making the reels, the putting the posts out, the landing pages, the funnels, all that sort of stuff, right? Obviously slightly different subjects, but the same sort of tactics and strategy. Yeah, I think AI will replicate OnlyFans very easily, very quickly. The aesthetics, the quick dopamine release sort of stuff, I think they should probably be worried. I feel the coaches, knowing there's like that human interaction. Let's say if you're a relationship coach, or a career coach, I just can't see how that's going to be replicated, because people want that interaction. They want to build the bond. They want to get to know someone. Would you agree with that? That some people are at risk here, aren't they? For sure. But I feel like actually there's still a lot to gain. And anyone else you think who's at risk, or anyone else you think can really sort of gain from this?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the service, because obviously with photos it's easy to just generate a photo. Even now, in a couple of years it's going to be even easier. So, but with coaching, obviously you're solving specific problems, you're talking to people, you're on calls, and you're kind of giving tailored solutions as well, which AI can't really do very well. Even if you give it the context, it can't go into your mind, it can't tell what you're thinking, which is obviously going to affect your skill and your business quite a lot. I'm not sure what will be replaced first. I think, yeah, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. What do you think?
It's such a good question. I feel that, let's say, of like the biggest named coaches in the world who people think about, when they think about coaching, Tony Robbins, Ashton Hall, James Smith, those sort of guys. Let's say Ashton Hall's a really good place to start. I never hear him talk. You see all the aesthetics. There's obviously coaching and programs going on the side. Surely AI can replicate that super easy. Create that mad aesthetic, get the interest, that shock value, and then roll out something on a PDF or whatever it might be, right? So personal training, that could be at risk. That's such a cliche one, isn't it? Is that quite easy to replicate, quite easy to put out, especially at entry level? I would say relationship coaching and stuff, I just can't see how AI can replicate it. Bottom level, entry level, possibly, those real super quick questions, but I just don't think at the real sort of higher level. But then you've got someone like Tony Robbins. He's already streaming his show out to, thousands of people in stadiums. Does it give him a greater opportunity to expand his reach? You remember I said about more people being able to get into this at a lower level because it will be cheaper, more simple. Can that give someone an opportunity to become even bigger? Actually, like one of the things we were talking about before we come on was Elton John. There's a big thing at the moment, isn't there, about he doesn't want his voice cloned. Yeah, he could go on and on and on. He might not even be here. His music's going to live forever, but he could keep on making new music even though he's not here because it can replicate. What does that do for someone like Tony Robbins? What does that do for someone like Ashton Hall? Could that be the future, if that makes sense? That personal development, low-level entry coaching could become much bigger. I think it's the second biggest developing business in the world, if that makes sense. Is that an opportunity for these massive big names and coaches and AI to expand it a lot more, but losing some authenticity as they go? So it's a yes and no. I'm on the fence. I feel like some will massively expand, like human nature does. I also think it will bring up more opportunity for coaches. There'll be more things, more niches. Like if you look at like the biggest trending niches for coaches at the moment, one of them was like being scared of the weather, worrying about that sort of stuff, right? So, like trying not to vape, for example, right?
Yeah.
So that can't be replicated by AI. That will always change and there'll always be something there. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think maybe AI can be like too logical, because if you tell AI like I'm scared of the weather, it's going to say, what are you thinking? Just come on, it's just weather. But I think with the human side, with the emotional side, they can kind of connect with it more. They've obviously talked to more people with that specific problem, especially like niche audiences. I can see that booming definitely quite a lot. I think with the entry level stuff, I don't think it's going to get any bigger. I think it's going to get smaller, if anything. Because if you lower the barriers to entry, more people are going to enter, and then there's going to be more competition, and everything's going to become the same with the AI. I think it's going to push everyone to work harder and to innovate and to think of better ideas, better niches, and kind of help people more. So I think it's only a good thing really for the people that use it. Obviously, people are always tweeting like either use AI or you're going to go extinct. Your job's going to get taken. I think that is true to an extent. If you don't adapt to the times, if you were in the 1980s and in 2020 you're still refusing to use the internet because it's a distraction or whatever you think it is, you're losing out. So I think you've got to ride with the times, but also niche down, see what happens. I think if you told us that we were going to be coaching coaches last year, we wouldn't have believed you. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think everyone will evolve with it. I don't think we've got too much to worry about.
I think that's a great way to see it. So maybe not Skynet and Terminator 2, where everything gets blown up and humans are back to square one, but maybe something where we're living side by side with it, and there'll be more opportunities. I think that's a good way to see it, but people are going to have to adapt, aren't they? They are going to have to change. And I'm really interested to see what the likes of Ashton Hall do and these types, because they are going to be faced with challenges as well. It's not just going to be any coach or any ghostwriter. I think even the top level ones are going to be, I was going to say competition. That's maybe not the best way to see it. They're going to have to be adaptable. I think that's a great way to see it. So I'm really interested to see how the space develops. I think it will look completely different in 6 months' time. Actually, I think the best way I can say how it's changing massively is Kit. Like this, the email sequence that we're pushing at the moment down this amazing lead magnet that we've created, and we've been creating something, haven't we? Like an email series. Actually, if we would have done it 6 months ago, I don't think you could add apps to Kit. I don't think you could put in links. I don't think that you could change fonts, even real crazy stuff like that, right? To the level that you can do now. The amount of integrations that you can put on Kit now that weren't there 6 months ago is incredible. So that goes to show, doesn't it, is that that's going to be the difference, isn't it? Is this is a very much a changing space. But Dan, a really amazing chat in a really interesting area. Anything that you want to finish off with? Anything that you think? Any other useful points?
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is don't worry too much. Just evolve with the times. Keep updated. Keep learning what's new. Find AI people on LinkedIn as well. That'll be useful. They're going to help you quite a lot. That's just another benefit of the personal brand. Nice little plug there. But yeah, I think the stuff with Kit it kind of proves our point really, how we're kind of in the golden era. We're not losing any jobs really with that Kit thing. We're just kind of gaining productivity and usefulness. So yeah, it's interesting. I'd be interested to know what anyone listening would think of this as well, because I think everyone has a different point of view.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great example. Is the newsletter has changed so much in 6 months. I can't wait to see what that's going to be like in another 6 months' time. I don't think that's daunting. I think that's exciting. And I think that's the best way to see it. But Dan, as always, a pleasure. Looking forward to speaking to Terran on the 22nd of June about an amazing course at Ordopia. And guys, remember, don't fall into the coach trap. If you've got any questions for me and Dan, feel like you can DM, and we'll catch up with you guys soon.